Warning: the following video contains major spoilers for Danganronpa V3, as well as descriptions of injury, blood, and suffering. Mature language may also be used. Viewer discretion is advised. Disclaimer: we do not own anything from the Danganronpa franchise. It belongs to and is the creation of Spike Chunsoft.
Amalgamate by DoctorHaifisch. Chapter 4 The Trial Part 1.
Oh shit. Maki's onto our plot.
Kaito chewed worriedly on his lip as he watched Maki narrow her eyes at the fake murder. She clearly wasn't convinced by what she'd seen, and Kaito could hardly blame her. He knew that if an actual body had been inside the breast, gallons of blood would have exploded across the hanger. But from the perspective of any normal person watching, the story told by the footage was clear. Kaito's body was lying on a clean, bloodless slab of metal, and when the breast slammed closed, blood gushed out, meaning someone had to have been inside. But Maki was a professional assassin. This was her entire life's work, agonizingly drilled into her brain over and over and over since childhood. She knew exactly how much blood was in a human body, and she knew exactly how much blood should have been expelled from the breast if someone got crushed. It was very apparent that Maki was not pleased with what she saw.
What did you do, you bastard?
Kaito didn't think he'd ever seen her so angry, not even when she'd stood over Kokichi with a crossbow, screaming at him to
Speak, or I'll put this arrow through your fucking heart!
Since everyone was reacting to the horrible video at once, Maki's outburst didn't particularly draw attention from the others. But Kaito didn't miss the way Shichi's eyes darted towards her, as if noting that there was something odd about the way she reacted to seeing someone she cared about get smashed into human soup. Kokichi quickly hit the mic, and unless Kaito was crazy, the boy was speaking slightly faster than normal.
I'd like to add that this footage has not been doctored in any way. This video camera only has the basic functions, just play, record, and pause buttons, so you can't edit after filming it. And of course, I didn't upload it to a computer to edit it either. Right, Monokuma?
For a moment, the bear didn't say anything, but then Kokichi gave an exasperated sigh only Kaito could hear before launching back into his performance.
Oh, you can talk. Your answer is necessary for a fair discussion.
I see!
Monokuma gleefully bounced in his seat.
If it's necessary for a fair discussion, then I will answer. No trace of that footage was found on any of the computers inside the academy.
See?
Kokichi made sure to exit gestures were as over the top and theatrical as possible.
If it wasn't connected to any computer, then editing the footage would be impossible, which means this footage is 100% real.
Laying it on thick there.
Kaito noted worriedly. He couldn't really blame Kokichi though. If they couldn't convince everyone in the room that there was a body in the breast, then Monokuma might catch on to the fact no one died. Then he wouldn't bother having anyone vote for a culprit. If he didn't declare a culprit, then the entire scheme was already up.
Why would you?
Maki was shaking with rage.
You fucking asshole!
Kaito could only imagine the horror going through her mind in that moment. It must have felt like salt put in a gaping, open wound. From her perspective, Kokichi, the supposed mastermind who put them all through weeks of physical and psychological torture, had stolen the antidote from Kaito, left him to die a slow, agonizing death, and then pretended to pulverize his corpse in hydraulic press just to make a circus out of the most devastating event in her life. Being an assassin, Maki most likely knew how many hours it would take for someone to die from strychnine poisoning, at least if the person was healthy, which Kaito certainly wasn't. And she probably assumed Kokichi had filmed the video while Kaito was choking for air on a filthy bathroom floor. Also, the class could play a suckerless game of whodunit over Kokichi's shitty B-movie horror production. That's all this was to Kokichi, right? A sick game of death for his own selfish entertainment. And since most of the evidence pointed to Maki's involvement at the crime scene, The only reason for Kokichi to obfuscate the cause of death and even hold a class trial was to torment her. It was gaunt all over again. Kokichi laughing at her grieving faces while he made the corpse of a fellow classmate dance like a puppet on strings. And yet, after the initial outburst, Maki had gone strangely silent. Simply stood there, shaking with rage, and said nothing. Kaito felt extremely unsettled.
Why isn't she speaking up? She knows the video is fake, so why isn't she? Oh,
Kaito's stomach sank.
because she needs it to be true. If she's going to kill Kokichi in the class trial, she has to convince everyone that he's the one who killed me. Pointing out a fallacy in the video will ruin her plan. She's not gonna say anything. She wants everyone to think you're the one who pulled the final trigger. I think she needs to believe it.
It was tragic realizing how far they'd fallen, that the only hope Maki had left to cling to was the tiniest fraction of a possibility that she hadn't truly killed Kaito, the first person to ever reach out to her and care about her as a person. Even the footage being shown to her was so obviously a fabrication.
Denial's not just a river in Egypt.
Kokichi sang, smiling wryly.
Told you she was a liar.
Shut up.
There was nothing Kaito could say, and nothing he could do except watch the tragedy play out. Luckily, most of their classmates were not trained assassins, and they seemed to believe the evidence being shown on screen.
If that's the case,
Kibo looked sorrowful, but resigned.
then it would seem our suspicion can be lifted. The body we found inside the hangar, crushed in the hydraulic press, is definitely Kaito.
Maki's eyes started towards Shuichi, as if checking to see whether or not the ultimate detective had noticed anything amiss. Shuichi, however, was still trapped in a state of mute, wide-eyed devastation. He didn't even notice Maki glancing his way.
Poor Kaito.
Himiko was visibly shaking.
I can't believe he died such a horrible death.
Seeing that Maki wasn't going to speak up, for the moment at least, Kokichi was quick to return to his performance.
Looks like you finally believe that I'm the one in this exosol.
Yes,
Kibo nodded solemnly.
with that, we can definitely say that the culprit is you. You filmed the moment the victim died, which means you were present at the scene. You and Kaito were the only two people in the hangar, and you're the one who filmed his death. So you're the only one who can be the culprit.
Something in Kibo's statement finally shook Shuichi out of his daze, and Kaito could see the gears turning behind his copper eyes.
But if the culprit shot the video, why would they go out of their way to show it?
Man, you got me. Yeah, I'm the culprit.
Kokichi cut Shuichi off before he could start prying. Even though the line was in the script, Kaito still rolled his eyes.
Every trial, he's gotta confess to being the culprit. Every damn time.
Jeez, totally dug my own grave.
Kokichi drawled.
Here's the truth. I decided to participate in this trial in an exosol after killing Kaito. Of course, it was mostly to make the victim unknown, to jazz things up. I took that footage for proof so I could reveal it after you guys got the correct answer, but... I totally spaced out. I wasn't supposed to show it right away.
Kaito shot Kokichi a confused look, but the boy either didn't notice or chose to ignore him. Kokichi's speech wasn't completely off script, but he was starting to ad-lib a few details earlier than expected.
Is he really panicking that much? That's not like him. Or at least, he's never let anyone see that it's like him.
So, does that mean you admit to the crime?
Tsumugi pointed an accusatory finger at the exosol. Kokichi furrowed his brow as if he was running rapid calculations through his head. Before Kaito could ask him what was wrong, Kokichi backpedaled into his previous persona.
Oh man, I dug my own grave again? Well, I don't think you guys will believe any excuses I make up now, so I give up.
You're giving up?
Himiko tugged anxiously on the brim of her hat.
Does that mean it's been decided?
Is it okay that this trial is so short?
Tsumui glanced around nervously, as if someone actually had an answer to her inane question.
Well, it better be short.
Kaito leaned forward, trying to ignore the twinge of hope in his chest that maybe the trial really could be over in less than 5 minutes. That optimism was also mingled with the urgent need to cough, however, and the hot blood curdling in his chest seemed to asphyxiate even that tiny glimmer of optimism.
Because there's no way Monokuma's convinced. And Monokuma's verdict is the only one that matters.
That's fine. We knew from the very start that Kokichi was the killer. But before we vote, I want to say something to Kokichi.
The way Maki glared at the exosol, Kaito swore her eyes could scorch holes through the metal.
You may be the mastermind, but I won't let you escape after you violated the rules. That would desecrate the killing game Junko and Oshima created, right? Your beloved Junko Enoshima?
In any other situation, the awkward silence that followed Maki's statement might have been comical. Kaito gave Kokichi a bewildered look.
You got a girlfriend outside of the academy you want to tell me about? Who the fuck is Junko Enoshima?
Kaito was positive he'd never seen Kokichi look so utterly baffled. He hadn't even realized it was possible to throw Kokichi off kilter that badly. The boy's fingers hovered uncertainly over the mic, but Himiko interrupted before Kokichi could ask Maki what the goddamn hell she was talking about.
Whatever. It's voting time now. Let's go before Kokichi changes
No,
his...
hold on a second.
Shuichi shouted. Seeing Kaito's death with his own eyes must have upset him horribly, because it was completely out of character for Shuichi to act so bold. Kaito wanted to feel touched by the sentiment, but he wasn't capable of feeling anything other than sick dread at the realization that the trial was far from over.
This isn't right. The culprit comes in, confesses to the crime, and the trial ends? That's not how this goes. That doesn't sound like the kind of game Kokichi, or Monokuma, or Junko would play.
Dude, seriously, who the fuck is Junko Enoshima?
Kaito wanted to put his fist through the goddamn viewfinder, but Kokichi quickly shook his head to silence him. If he had any answers, he certainly didn't provide them. Meanwhile, Tsumugi glanced uncertainly at her classmates.
What if the mastermind got tired of it? The remnants of despair were left.
No! If they were tired of it, they wouldn't have to put all that effort into the video. There would be no need for this class trial in the first place. Something's not right. We need to get a better feel of the situation. I think Kokichi has some sort of plan. He's trying to trap us.
Inside the exisal, Kokichi's lips twisted into a smile that seemed both proud and bitter at the same time.
Trap us?
Maki raised an eyebrow.
Are you saying Kokichi isn't the culprit? Then, are you suggesting one of us is the culprit?
If it's not Kokichi, then the culprit must be one of us.
For some reason, Kibo's ice blue eyes darted towards Himiko, who was sweating under her hat.
One of us?
No, Kokichi is the culprit. He killed Kaito, and no matter how much he deceives us, it won't change our minds. The footage shows he did it. Kokichi has to be the only option.
Kokichi gave Kaito the most infuriating I told you so look of all time. And then, everyone started arguing at once. It was nearly impossible to tell who was speaking amidst the chaos, but Kaito could see Kokichi's eyes fixated on Shuichi, waiting to see where the detective would lead the trial next.
Come on, Shuichi. I know you're gonna bring up the safety function. Just do it already.
Kaito flipped forward a few pages in the script, and sure enough, Kokichi's prediction was that Shuichi would bring up the safety function as soon as someone tried to insist the video was proof of a murder. Kaito's heart sank at the realization that this was going to be a lot harder than anticipated. If Shuichi started arguing about the cause of death, then the class would inevitably start arguing about the time of death. And given the fact that the bathroom was littered with bloody arrows and an antidote for poison, there was a lot to discuss.
Damn it. Maybe I should have cleaned up the crime scene a little, but I was in such a hurry. Shuichi's just far too smart for his own good. Maki's made it clear that she's gonna fight us to the bitter end.
Then, suddenly, Kaito was struck by an idea, causing him to grasp Kokichi's shoulder without thinking. He hadn't done it roughly, but the boy's face still contorted in agony at the touch.
Ow, jeez! Would you stop that, you clumsy oaf? You're so mean!
It looked like Kokichi was about to launch into his usual theatrical waterworks, but Kaito was painfully aware of the fact that this time, the tears might very well be real.
Sorry. I didn't mean to.
Kaito yanked his hand away as if he'd been bitten by a cobra.
What, Kaito?
Okay, so, you know how you said our main focus is making Monokuma choose you as the Black End?
Kokichi gave Kaito a dull look.
Nope. I totally forgot what I wrote in my own script.
It's gonna take all the dark matter energy in the universe to keep me from punching this child. Okay, well, that's just a suggestion, right? Because if Maki's not gonna come clean about the video, I think we should pin the crime on her.
Kokichi's eyes widened, and for a brief moment, Kaito saw something unexpected, something like fear, flash through them, before Kokichi quickly slipped back into his usual mocking demeanor.
Oops, nope. That whole suggestion thing, that was a lie.
Why? What difference does it make who the class votes for as long as Monokuma's wrong?
The difference is that I said no. How dare you argue with a supreme leader?
Kokichi turned back towards the viewfinder and winced at the bright and natural glow. Poison had been making him hypersensitive to light, and Kaito wondered how much longer Kokichi would be able to keep his eyes on the trial. Of course, feeling sorry for the brat didn't make him any less infuriating to deal with.
What do you mean, no? Why can't we—
Shut up, Kaito!
Kokichi buried his face in the crook of his arm to shield his eyes from the viewfinder.
Just stick to the damn script!
Kaito wanted to yell at Kokichi for having the audacity to yell at him, but he knew this wasn't the time to take things personally. He didn't doubt for a second that Kokichi's anger was coming from a place of real, genuine suffering, and Kaito would know. His own temper had gotten progressively worse the more he was consumed by pain and anxiety from his own illness. There had been times these past few weeks where it took all his self-control not to violently lash out at everyone around him, even his own sidekicks, because the people he trusted were committing murder, while his lungs were in flames. He wanted to yell and scream at the whole damn universe about how unfair it all was. He was willing to punch a hole through a brick wall and break his fingers if that's what it took to focus the mind on something besides fear and death.
What kind of bullshit is this that my lungs are burning into cinder while I'm trapped in a goddamn killing game? What did I do to deserve this?
And no matter how hard he tried to hide it, Kokichi was clearly being consumed by his own poison. His shoulders were shaking, and he was breathing a lot faster than before. As gently as possible, so as to not hurt the boy this time, Kaito gripped Kokichi's shoulder and eased him out of his hunched position.
Come on, sit up, you little punk. You're making it harder for yourself to breathe all curled up like that.
I can't breathe because of your dumb jock body spray.
Kokichi laughed, but it was hollow. It looked like he was trying to slip on one of his masks, but didn't have the strength to actually do it. Kokichi's weak attempt at humor was an obvious white flag, and Kaito knew it was as close to an apology as he was ever going to get. But it still sickened him to see all the Kokichi draining from Kokichi's face.
He's getting so much worse.
Kaito's thoughts flitted anxiously back and forth behind his eyes.
But he won't let me see how bad it's gotten, so we have no way of knowing how much he—
Kaito's stomach churned.
Damn it! Why are we wasting time on all this crap? Screw this script!
But it was too late. Shuichi had already reached the exact conclusion Kokichi predicted.
The safety function would make it impossible to kill Kaito with the press. Yes, it was written on the safety precautions. The hydraulic press will automatically stop if its infrared sensors detects a living organism.
Tsumugi tilted her head to the side.
So the hydraulic press won't move at all if there's a living person under it?
Shuichi nodded. A newly rekindled fire in his eyes.
Which is why it couldn't have been used to kill Kaito. Which means it's more likely that Kaito was crushed after being killed by some other means.
Kibo nodded.
Here we go. Shuichi, why do you have to be such a good detective? For once in your life, can you stop being so damn cool?
So, what we saw in that video, he was already dead by then?
But you can disable the infrared sensor of the safety function with an electro bomb.
Maki reminded them. Shuichi quickly shook his head.
No, I don't think Kokichi would have used an electro bomb for that purpose. It would have taken down the hangar's alarm system and the Extrasol's remote control. It would have put Kokichi at a significant disadvantage.
Before Kaito could stop him or suggest taking over, Kokichi had already switched on the mic.
But you can't be sure I wouldn't do that. I'm the type who would do anything for fun.
Maki completely ignored his attempt to derail the conversation.
Also, we don't have any evidence of a different murder method other than the hydraulic
No, we do. I have a plausible theory for the murder.
It always amazed Kaito how dauntless Shuichi was during the trials compared to his daily life.
I wish he could bottle up some of that confidence and take it out of the courtroom with him.
Maki, however, seemed less than pleased with Shuichi's attitude.
What?
There was a swipe pattern bloodstain in the hangar.
Shuichi reminded her, and Kaito grimaced at the memory of Kokichi's agonized whimpers as he was dragged across the floor by the open wound in his back. He preferred not to be reminded. Thank you very much.
The bloodstain suggests there was a body dragged. It goes from the bathroom all the way to the press. The bloodstains were also found inside of the bathroom. That can't be a coincidence.
So, Kaito was killed in the restroom, then dragged to the press and crushed?
Himiko clapped her hands over her mouth in horror.
If the bloodstain even was Kaito's.
Maki glared at Himiko for some reason. Shuichi looked understandably perplexed by her reaction.
What?
We only guessed that Kaito was killed in the bathroom. Since his body was crushed, we'll never know if Kaito died some other way. If his body was even crushed.
She shot a dark look at the Exasol, as if to remind them that the video was total bullshit, and she knew it. Kaito swallowed nervously, worrying how much longer he'd have to wait for the other shoe to drop.
And it's going to drop. I just know it.
I think the small hole in the sleeve of Kaito's coat is the key cause of death.
Small hole?
Himiko went white as a sheet.
No
No. There's no way that hole's got anything to do with the weapon.
Kaito couldn't help but groan. He felt terrible about getting Himiko involved in this mess by asking her to bring him a crossbow. But at the same time, she couldn't dig her own grave hole any deeper if she tried.
I believe the weapon was a crossbow found in the bathroom.
Shuichi concluded. Himiko was visibly sweating.
Well, maybe she could dig it a little deeper.
A crossbow would certainly leave a hole that small. Can we then conclude that Kaito was shot with that crossbow?
Himiko started to protest, but Kokichi suddenly hit the mic with far more force than necessary.
If that was his cause of death, then I wonder who shot him with the crossbow. Well, I already know, but I won't tell you.
He's just playing with us.
Then let's show him that playtime is over.
Kibo raised his fist in an uncharacteristically fierce gesture.
Let's show him that the students of Hope's Peak Academy will never submit to despair.
Hope's Peak Academy? What the hell is that?
Hope? Despair?
Kokichi sounded equally confused. Then, suddenly, he checked his hand off the mic, as if he'd been burned. At first, Kaito didn't understand why Kokichi had such an extreme reaction. But then, with a sinking feeling, he realized Kokichi hadn't intended to say those words out loud to the courtroom.
It's not like Kokichi to make a mistake like that.
He thought worriedly. As the students exploded into another argument, Kaito shifted sideways in his seat to try and get a better look at Kokichi. The boy was staring, wide-eyed at his hand.
Why does everyone keep saying hope and despair? What does it mean?
I don't know. I've never even heard of Hope's Peak Academy. I thought we all came from different schools.
It was a flashback light.
What?
It had to be a flashback light left behind by the mastermind.
Kokichi had that look on his face again, like a supercomputer, running rapidly through a stream of complex equations.
Everyone's acting different all of a sudden. They've remembered something. The mastermind made everyone remember something that would give a strategic advantage to whoever's running this game. Something that would turn everyone against me.
Yeah, that sounds plausible.
Kaito swallowed nervously.
Listen, Kokichi,
Pay attention to the trial. Black Widow's talking.
Kokichi cut him off, and Kaito's teeth clicked as his mouth snapped shut.
The shot would need to be fired inside the hangar to hit Kaito.
It looked like Maki was currently in the middle of an argument with Shuichi.
But even without going into the hangar, it was possible to land a shot with the crossbow. There was a window in the bathroom. You could have shot through the window. And remember, Kaito was confined to the bathroom.
Kokichi switched on the mic, something that hadn't made Kaito feel particularly wary until now.
So, if they shot Kaito through the window, they could have killed him in the hangar. Which means, the murder suspect list grows to 6 people, including me!
Kaito furrowed his brow.
Wait, what are you doing? Do we really need to?
Himiko was sweating so badly, her hair started clinging to her face.
Yeah? What did you say?
It seems Shuichi wants to make one of us the culprit.
Maki turned a vicious glare upon the ultimate detective, her hands clenched with fists at her sides.
Is that it? Is that what a detective does?
Kaito felt his brain stutter and reboot as it attempted to keep up with the whiplash.
I can't handle being trapped between this many confusing people in my life at once. Why is Maki going after Shuichi now?
Shuichi seemed equally confused.
Huh?
Maki was trying to remain calm, but Kaito could detect a hint of hysteria in her voice.
Do detectives always accuse people? Even when they're friends? You suspected Kaito in the previous class trial too. You're always suspicious of your friends.
Suddenly, she slammed her fist down on top of her podium.
And when we said we would defeat the remnants of despair, someone got in our way.
No, you don't understand. I'm trying
It doesn't matter how much you get in my way. I will absolutely defeat Kokichi.
Maki was practically spitting with rage, but her crimson eyes were glistening with tears.
I won't let despair escape. I won't let it win.
Holy shit, Maki.
Kaito leaned back in his seat in disbelief.
What the hell did that flashback light do to you?
If Kokichi was surprised to see Maki turning her eye on Shuichi rather than a mastermind, he was doing a good job of hiding it.
Now, let's stop this boring fight and continue on with the not-so-boring trial!
Which Kaito could easily translate to mean,
Let's get back to the damn script already!
I agree,
said Shuichi, although he sounded a bit more hesitant now that he'd been on the receiving end of Maki's fury.
Just because the culprit could be anyone, not everyone is a suspect. We can pretty much narrow it down to anyone who knew about the crossbow.
For the first time in a good 10 minutes, Kaito felt his whole body slump in relief. At this rate, Kokichi wouldn't have any choice but to give in and go with his plan to pin the crime on Maki. Kaito didn't want to put her through such torment, especially when her spirit was already broken so badly that it was starting to shatter, but time was of the essence here. Because no matter how much Kokichi protested, and frankly, Kaito had absolutely no idea why the kid was protesting, the trial would end a lot faster if they could get Maki to confess to a role in the fictional murder, or at the very least, corner her enough that the class would have no choice but to vote her the culprit. Kaito hated the thought of making her believe she was still a killer, his killer, but if the mastermind set the whole thing up to bait Maki into targeting Kokichi to commit a murder, Monokuma was far more likely to accept that that's more or less what happened. He'd have no reason to doubt that the ultimate assassin killed someone. Then they'd all vote for Maki. Kaito and Kokichi would reveal that no one actually died, and hopefully, Maki would find it in her heart to forgive them after everyone was out of danger. Now that Shuichi was narrowing down a list of suspects to anyone who knew about the crossbow, he effectively had Maki's back up against the wall.
I never knew about any crossbows. In other words, I'm not suspicious. There's no way you can consider me.
It does concern me that Himiko went to the hangar last night.
And just like that, all the relief Kaito felt completely drained away, replaced with a boiling pit of frustration in his stomach.
Why did I ever think things would go easily in this godforsaken trial?
Kaito sat up abruptly, causing Kokichi to cringe at his sudden movement. But before Kaito could curse or apologize or do something, Kokichi shot him a warning look and mouthed at him to shut up.
You were watching me?
Oh, it's awfully suspicious that you went to the hangar last night.
With extreme effort, Kokichi pulled on the Exorcist's left throttle stick, so it triumphantly threw its arm in the air.
Okay, then the culprit is Himiko!
Kaito snatched Kokichi's other hand off the mic, a bit more roughly than intended.
Dude, what the hell? I don't care what kind of ridiculous scenarios you stuffed in that script. Himiko had nothing to do with this, and you know it! Why are you—
The sinister look Kokichi gave him was blood-curdling.
If Killer Girl's got even a shred of decency left in her, she won't let Himiko take the fall.
Kokichi's smile stretched from ear to ear, so wide and painful, it looked as if the skin on his face might crack.
Time to find out if Maki rolls have souls.
Kaito clenched his hands into fists. He could hear the rage pumping in his ears.
Why, you little— How dare you toy with my friends like that?
Wait, don't say it's me!
Himiko was practically in tears already.
Maki's way more suspicious than I am!
Maki turned silently towards Himiko with a dangerous chill in her eyes. The assassin made no attempt to refute Kokichi's claims, nor did she make any attempt to stand up for Himiko. Kaito's heart sank.
You're kidding me. Maki-ro, you wouldn't.
Even if you make that scary face at me, I am not gonna get scared,
said Himiko, despite the fact that she was very obviously scared. In fact, she was trembling so badly, Kaito was worried she'd pass out. Kokichi chuckled as if completely unaffected by the cruel scene he was orchestrating.
If you start panicking, Himiko, then we'll know that you're the culprit.
I said I'm not the culprit! I swear!
Himiko was actually crying now, tears streaming down her cheeks. Yet still, Maki remained silent.
You said you went up to the hangar empty-handed, but that was a lie, wasn't it?
Kibo saw you.
He said you were headed toward the hangar, carrying a large black bag. This is a bag you were carrying, wasn't it?
Shuichi leaned down and lifted the carrying case from behind his podium.
That's the crossbow case.
What?
Tsumugi reeled back in shock.
Hold on! Himiko went to the hangar with a crossbow!
Uh-oh. Guess it's decided then.
Kaito had no idea how he found the strength to keep himself from putting the boy in a headlock and clapping a hand over his vicious lying mouth.
Maybe Kokichi was right.
He thought, seething with fury.
Why the hell am I trying to save the villain of this story? What kind of hero does that? I can't believe for a while there I convinced myself that maybe Kokichi even had a drop of humanity inside of him. That maybe he had actually had a heart in that miserable little chest of his.
But deep down, Kaito knew Kokichi wasn't the one he should be mad at.
Wait, that's wrong! I just brought it there! I didn't shoot it! It's the truth! Please believe me!
I don't think Himiko used the crossbow. More accurately, she couldn't have used it. The crossbow inside the case was disassembled. Kaito and I learned how to assemble the crossbow for Maki, so we could have done it. But I don't believe somebody without proper training could have assembled it.
If he could have, Kaito would have thrown his arms around Shuichi and hugged him so tightly he might have snapped a few ribs. Unfortunately, he wasn't trapped in an exosol with Shuichi. He was trapped in hell, with a cruel, heartless, compassionless demon wearing human skin.
Well, what if Maki taught Himiko how to assemble the crossbow?
Kokichi's voice sounded innocent, but there was a nasty gleam in his eyes. Forgetting himself for a moment, Kaito seized him gruffly by the arm. He felt the boy tense up, but otherwise, his threat was ignored.
She didn't teach me that, right, Maki?
Himiko was practically begging now. She was begging for mercy, yet still, Maki refused to say a word. She wouldn't even look at Himiko.
I told you she was a liar.
Because you keep attacking her. You don't get to play offensive, then get angry when somebody defends themselves.
Back in the courtroom, Himiko was wiping away her tears with the back of her hand.
What's wrong, Maki? Are you mad about before? I'm sorry. I thought they were gonna suspect me, so I lied. I'm sorry, Maki. Please, can you tell them the truth?
Kaito watched with bated breath, and for a long, agonizingly tense moment, there was silence. He could see Maki's expression wavering, her eyes darting around uncertainly. And then, at last, her shoulders slumped as if all the fight had gone out of her at once.
Fine. I'm not going to lie. I didn't teach Himiko how to assemble the crossbow. She couldn't have used it.
With his hand still gripping Kokichi's arm, Kaito felt the boy go slack. Kokichi released a slow, shuddering breath. His head bowed forward so that his dark, wet hair fell over his eyes in limp, bedraggled curls. Kaito felt a spike of fear, thinking Kokichi had lost consciousness, but he could feel how rigid the boy was under his grip. Then, Kokichi shuddered again, and whispered something that sounded an awful lot like a curse.
I told you, we can't pin the crime on Maki. It has to be me. It has to be.
Wait,
Kaito stared down at Kokichi's trembling shoulders.
was that some kind of test? Was he wasting all that time and energy on testing Maki? But why?
Feeling more than a little perturbed by Kokichi's behavior, Kaito leaned forward, but the boy's face was shrouded in shadow.
What are you talking about, Kokichi? What were you doing? Answer me for once, goddammit!
The boy swayed a little, and Kaito tightened his grip on his arm to steady him. As expected, Kokichi's scrambled nerve signals caused him to freeze up at the pressure, but rather than resisting the convulsion, his head lolled as if his neck was too weak to support it.
Has to be me. Got it, spaceman.
What are you saying?
Kaito felt utterly helpless as he watched Kokichi slump forward with his trembling hands gripping the edge of the dashboard. His sweaty hair dripped onto the console, and Kaito could hear him panting harshly. A chill went down his spine when he noticed a faint wheeze in Kokichi's breath that hadn't been there before.
Kokichi.
The boy shook his head and pointed weakly at the viewfinder, silently commanding Kaito to keep his eyes on the trial. After all, the debate was going to continue regardless of the horror story unfolding inside the exisal.
Then, why did you bring the crossbow to the hangar, Himiko?
Kibo gave the so-called mage a questioning look.
I was asked to.
She sniffled as a stray tear rolled down her cheek.
Was it Kaito?
Asked Shuichi.
Only Kaito or Kokichi could have asked for a crossbow to be brought to the hangar. And because Kaito knows how to assemble the crossbow, he certainly could have used it. I do not think Himiko would bring the crossbow at Kokichi's request.
Kibo grimaced, and so did Kaito, suddenly imagining the Ultimate Supreme Leader waving around a loaded, long-range weapon like an extra on the set of Battle Royale.
Of course not.
Himiko pouted like a child.
And I kept it a secret because Kaito told me to.
I'm so sorry, kid.
Shuichi had his hand on his chin, clearly contemplating something.
Himiko, when exactly did Kaito ask you to do this?
I think it was around evening yesterday. I took a walk near the hangar and Kaito called out to me.
So if Kaito asked for a crossbow, does that mean he was going to kill Kokichi?
Tsumugi winced at the thought.
No, he said it was to disable Kokichi. I wouldn't have helped otherwise.
Kaito felt a swell of pride towards Himiko for that, but Kokichi audibly scoffed. Kaito couldn't decide whether he should be annoyed at the fact that Kokichi was still a brat, even while losing coherence, or relieved that Kokichi still had enough life left in him to keep being the ultimate supreme asshole, even while huddled at death's door.
But what did Kaito do after he had the crossbow?
Himiko shrugged and her shoulders drooped. She was clearly drained and exhausted from all the crying.
I don't know. I just handed him the crossbow and then went back to the dorms.
It doesn't matter what happened in between. In the end, Kokichi killed Kaito. So let's just hurry up and vote.
No, it's too soon. There are still mysteries.
Shuichi insisted. And once again, Kaito cursed himself for teaching the boy how to be so damn confident. Well, He was glad Shuichi was confident, but now was not the time. Not when Kokichi was... He was... Kaito didn't know what he was, because that stubborn little bastard wouldn't tell him. Kokichi remained slouched forward with his hands clutching the dashboard, and he refused to let Kaito touch him or look at his face. The boy was so thin. Kaito could see the sharp curve of his spine through his back, and he could see the way his ribs shuddered with each breath. Kaito tried not to panic, but...
Who am I kidding? I'm freaking the fuck out! What am I gonna do?
Who cares about that? We already know who the culprit is.
Maki continued to battle her classmates. Then, at long last, the damn elephant, bear in the room spoke up.
You sure about that?
Monokuma tapped her paw restlessly on the arm of his chair.
As the one running this trial, it bothers me when anyone says mysteries don't matter. That affects the overall entertainment value. So I encourage you to really think about things. After all, there should be some mysteries that still matter. For example, is Kokichi really inside that exisal? Stuff like that.
What are you saying?
Maki glowered at Monokuma.
We already finished that discussion a while ago.
Kokichi's gotta still be alive, since the killing game's still going.
Himiko glanced warily at the Ultimate Supreme Leader's portrait beside her.
His voice is even coming from the exisal and everything.
But we heard it speak in Kaito's voice earlier, didn't we?
Monokuma cocked his head innocently to the side, yet Kaito had never felt such dread in his life. Kokichi had written it quite clearly in the script. The moment Monokuma brought up the change in voices, that was Kaito's cue to take over the mic.
Damn it.
Kokichi finally forced himself to sit up. Then, with a scowl, he leaned against the curved wall of the cockpit and made a feeble, "all yours" gesture towards the control panel. No matter how frightened Kaito was, he knew, deep down, that the voice switch couldn't have come at a better time. Kokichi was trying very hard to keep up his act, and considering he'd been injected with one of the most physically painful poisons known to man, a poison frequently used for torture, his performance was damn impressive. But despite his less than kind thoughts earlier, Kaito had to grudgingly admit that Kokichi was a human being, and that meant even the Ultimate Supreme Leader had his limits. Kokichi was clearly losing his battle with the striking man poison, and Kaito doubted the boy could continue his theatrics much longer. It was up to Kaito now to pick up the slack.
Don't worry, kid. I got this. I think.
Kaito hit the mic, then barreled headfirst into his performance as fast as possible, to ensure none of his doubts could catch up to him.
Yeah, don't rely on that. After all, this exisal has a voice changer.
He announced to the court, the irony being that neither Kaito nor Kokichi had actually used the voice changer yet during the trial. Kaito laughed, ignoring the gasp of shock from his classmates.
Ha! Because of that, nobody realizes I'm pretending to be Kokichi. But no more! Sorry for the wait, guys!
Kaito launched the exisal into a fierce but elegant leap across the trial grounds and landed with a loud crash behind his own question mark portrait. Then, he made the exisal curl the fingers of its hand into a triumphant fist.
The luminary of the stars has arrived! This time for real!
Kaito wished he felt as fearless and lively as his voice sounded. But the truth was that piloting the exisal was sapping what little energy he had left in him. When speaking into the microphone, it felt like he had to restrain his lungs inside iron bars just to keep from audibly coughing, and he could already feel a cold sweat breaking out on his brow.
What? What's going on?
I told you, I'm Kaito! I was just pretending to be Kokichi is all. There's a bit of a situation going on, so I didn't really have a choice. Sorry about tricking you guys like that. My bad.
Tsumugi had gone pale.
Huh? So, Kaito's in there after all?
Don't be stupid.
Said Maki, though there was a glimmer of apprehension in her eyes.
How many times are you going to be tricked by him? That's Kokichi pretending to be Kaito.
Hey now, Maki Roll. Don't you believe me?
If Kaito thought he'd seen Maki angry before, it was nothing compared to the violent, malevolent energy that rolled off her in waves now.
Don't ever call me that.
Despite her fury, her voice was quiet, deadly, warped with hatred. Her eyes were glowing red with rage.
Whoa there, chill!
And Kaito meant it. Maki's unchecked outrage terrified him at that moment. He didn't doubt for 1 second that she was capable of doing something she'd regret if he didn't get her to calm down quickly.
You really think I'm Kokichi? I mean, I guess I understand. Sorry, I can't really get out of this thing right now.
Kibo looked understandably skeptical, even as his eyes started fearfully towards Maki.
Why not?
I can't move because of this injury I got from Kokichi.
Kaito explained, and it pained him to have to lie so blatantly to his friends' faces. But there was simply no other choice. not when Kokichi was visibly struggling to breathe beside him.
It's so bad I can't even stand.
Well, that part was partially true.
That's why I'm in this exisal.
Is that so?
Himiko nervously picked up a thread on the sleeve of her jacket. She looked doubtful.
But if you guys don't believe me, then we can't move on. So, you're up, Shuichi.
What? Me?
Shuichi blanched in surprise.
Explain to everyone how I wasn't the one that died.
In the script, this was meant to be a trap. Another one of those ridiculous roundabout chess moves that Kokichi was so fond of and excellent at. By forcing Shuichi to try proving the wrong answer, he'd invariably end up unwavering the truth. It takes a lot more effort and evidence to spin a narrative incorrectly, and it requires looking at things from a completely new and usually less obvious angle. Shuichi would have no choice but to start picking lies from the truths, and the more truths he found, the more deductions would lead him to the opposite, correct conclusion. At the end of the day, the evidence in this case was far more in favor of Kaito being dead, so now he had to lure Shuichi towards the verdict until it became irrefutable. Then, maybe, they could end this nightmare. And quickly. Kokichi was a mess. Now that Kaito was piloting the exisal, he could feel his own blood loss and fatigue catching up to him. The itch in his chest was starting to overwhelm his senses and fog up his thoughts. It was hard to concentrate on anything beyond the need to expel the sickness from his lungs. Shuichi seemed to shrink in on himself. Staring down at his feet, he looked far too much like the little boy Kaito had met that first day in the Ultimate Academy. The boy who hid beneath his head and refused to look anyone in the eye. The boy who was so insecure he could hardly bring himself to even speak in front of others, unless he had assurance from a trusted friend.
I don't want to believe it. In a way, I still can't. But the evidence shows that Kaito must be the one who died.
It hurt to see such raw pain and sorrow on Shuichi's face, but Kaito was proud of him. Even when the evidence pointed towards the conclusion his classmates didn't want to hear, the detective still firmly stood his ground. Kaito wished he'd had the same courage during Gonta's trial.
I hate it. I hate it so much. But it's the truth.
Kokichi let out a single tired laugh, although Kaito wasn't sure what was so funny. Perhaps it was a relieved laugh? Or maybe an ironic one? Who could ever really say with Kokichi?
I see. If that's the conclusion you arrived at, Shuichi, then there must be no mistake.
Then the one here is...
Before Tsumugi could even finish her sentence, however, Himiko tapped her lip and thought.
I don't understand, though. I only brought Kaito one arrow. So, how come both Kaito and Kokichi had holes in their clothes?
Shit. Have fun.
Kokichi chuckled weakly. Kaito shot him an irritated look as he coughed into the sleeve of his shirt.
This isn't funny.
Wait, Himiko, what do you mean, one arrow?
Shuichi's face fell.
Yeah? Well, I only gave Kaito one.
Are you positive? There were 3 arrows in the bathroom, remember? And all 3 of them had blood on them.
But I know I only gave him one. Kaito even told me to only bring him one. He said he wanted to avoid fighting.
Kokichi snorted derisively.
This from the stupid himbo who punched me in the face.
Himbo!
Kaito wanted to argue, but one look at Kokichi made all his pent-up aggression drain away. Even though he was still forcing himself to crack jokes, the boy looked terrible. His jaw was clenched tightly, probably to avoid making any sounds that would give away how much pain he was in, or reveal how badly his muscles were seizing up. Kokichi's skin had taken on a deathly ashen pallor.
This can't continue.
Kaito pried his eyes away from the dismal sight.
This needs to end right fucking now.
But despite Kaito's desperation, the trial showed no signs of stopping.
Maybe Kokichi had some hidden away.
Why would Kokichi have to if he didn't have a crossbow to fire them?
Kibo actually had the audacity to roll his eyes. Kaito made a mental note to commend the robot on his ballsy new attitude after the whole mess was over.
Could it be?
Shuichi suddenly looked nauseated.
The additional arrows were brought in by a third party. To use themselves?
So the third party didn't hand the arrows through the window.
Said Kaito, playing along.
Instead, they went into the hangar and shot the crossbow themselves?
Impossible.
Maki looked legitimately shaken.
There was an alarm system and an electric barrier around the hangar.
No.
Shuichi pressed a hand over his mouth.
The extrasols could be used to enter the hangar. I saw an extrasol enter the hangar last night.
Kiba had a look of dread on his face as his deductions led him down the same grim path as Shuichi.
Was the third party plotting it?
Yeah, it's not that hard.
said Kaito, not wanting to miss an opportunity to boast, even in a class trial.
Granted, I am the ultimate astronaut, so piloting for me is a cinch.
He heard Kokichi snort again. The little brat.
I believe this third party commandeered an Extasol and infiltrated the hangar. That same person must have brought the other 2 arrows with them.
I told you that's impossible. No one can stop an exascale in order to get inside one.
What are you talking about?
Shichi's normally calm demeanor was starting to crack, revealing how frustrated he was from wrangling his belligerent peers.
You just need an electro hammer. And I know what happened, because I found one. There was a used electro hammer near Monokuma's Extasol.
Kaito's eyes started nervously towards Kokichi. The boy was watching him intently with those piercing, all-knowing eyes.
Fuck. He's gonna be so pissed at me.
Himiko looked stunned.
Was the electro hammer used by the third party? Maybe they used it to disable an exasol.
Yes, I think so. When I saw them last afternoon, there were 4 Extasols. This morning, there were only 3. I noticed that too. Was the missing Extasol taken by the third party?
Kaito saw his chance, and he was gonna take it. To help with Kokichi's plans.
Wow, Shuichi. That's some amazing detective work. I'm proud of you.
And that was the truth.
So who did it then? Who is this third party?
While Shuichi mulled over the question, Kokichi sat up, wild-eyed. With far more strength and ferocity than he should have been capable of, Kokichi slapped Kaito's hand away from the mic.
What are you doing?
Ending this trial.
Kaito gripped the Exorcist's pilot sticks and glared at the viewfinder, stubbornly refusing to meet Kokichi's smoldering glare.
You...
The boy spluttered in uncharacteristic indignation.
I told you! I said no!
And I told you we can end the trial in half time if we pin the crime on Maki!
God damn you, Kaito!
Kokichi seemed genuinely upset, even going so far as to make a feeble attempt at seizing the controls from Kaito. Weak as the boy was, however, Kaito had no trouble using his shoulder to block Kokichi before he could even reach the mic. When Kokichi tried again, Kaito pressed the hand firmly to the boy's chest and pushed him back against the wall with enough force to make it clear he wasn't going to give in, but gently enough not to hurt him. Nonetheless, he could feel Kokichi's fevered heart hammering frantically against his palm. Kaito eased the pressure a little, feeling more than a little ashamed, but he still refused to let Kokichi launch for the control panel again.
Calm down, goddammit! What is your problem?
I told you to pin the crime on me! You never listen!
Why does it matter? Why do you care who ends up being the culprit?
If Kokichi planned to answer, Kaito never found out, because the boy was suddenly gripped by another convulsion. He threw his head back, the muscles in his neck straining, and Kaito noted fearfully that Kokichi seemed to stop breathing during the fit. Before Kaito could do anything, however, Shuichi finally reached the conclusion he'd been aiming for with his scheme.
Maki,
The detective's voice was far calmer and more resigned than Kaito expected.
you're the third party we're looking for, aren't you?
Everyone gasped, but inside the exasol, Kokichi let out a strangled whine of frustration. Kaito eased his hand off the boy's chest, but kept it raised to block him from making another move towards the dashboard.
What? It's Maki!
Tsumugi clutched her hands together as if praying. Kaito expected Maki to start yelling, to scream her denial at Shuichi, to throw insults at the exasol, but she didn't. She stood with her back, ramrod straight, swaying slightly, her gaze fixated on something none of them could see.
What are you saying?
The assassin's voice was tight, as if it was a struggle to get the words past her throat. Shuichi, to his credit, still didn't back down.
Remember what Kokichi said? If you use an electro hammer against an exasol, you'll run out of juice with just one shot. It needs to be recharged for 24 hours after it runs out of battery. So it couldn't have been used this morning.
Maki was the only one without an electro hammer this morning, wasn't she?
Tsumugi gave Maki a wary look. Maki didn't respond, but Shuichi continued to push her farther and farther down the gangplank.
Knowing that, the electro hammer I found could have only belonged to Maki, and that leads me to the conclusion that Maki must be the third party.
Maki was still silent. Shuichi was not.
She also knows how to assemble the crossbow. She could have returned it to her lab later. You brought a different crossbow than the one that Kaito had, right?
The look Kibo gave Maki was surprisingly incensed. And still, the assassin refused to speak.
Maki took the 2 arrows and her own crossbow from the lab. Then she disassembled an extasol with an electro hammer and infiltrated the hangar. Now we just need to figure out what happened after—
Stop!
Maki's voice rang out suddenly in the courtroom. A stunned silence fell, allowing them all to hear harsh, angry breathing.
Why? are you doing this? Why are you getting in my way?
Getting in your way?
Chi-Chi looked utterly bewildered.
Maki, what are you—
Yes, I'm the third party.
The assassin trembled, speaking through clenched teeth.
I admit to going to the hangar with an exisal, and then shooting the crossbow, but I didn't kill anyone. I'm not the culprit. Even if the crossbow was fired, think about where the arrow holes are located on Kaito and Kokichi's clothes. Arrow wounds to the arms and back wouldn't result in a fatal injury.
Kaito expected Kokichi to scoff or say something sarcastic, and the fact that he didn't was surprisingly worrying.
It wouldn't have mattered where the arrow hit.
Chi-Chi leveled Maki with an icy glare.
If it were poisoned.
You idiot.
Shut up! The antidote bottle was still in the bathroom. Shuichi was always gonna reach that conclusion. I just sped it up.
I noticed something about the Strike 9 poison in my lab during the investigation.
Chi-Chi elaborated, as if he could hear the private conversation inside the exisal.
There was just a little less in the bottle than before. If that poison had been applied to the arrows, that would have been lethal, no matter how they were connected.
When Maki didn't respond, Kibo turned to face her.
Maki, do you have a rebuttal?
Well, what's the matter?
Himiko peeked warily at Maki from beneath the brim of her hat.
Why don't you say anything? Don't tell me. Are you really the culprit? Did you kill Kokichi?
Then it really was Kaito in the exisal, because Maki would never kill Kaito.
Chi-Chi's usually warm golden eyes had gone frigid and gray.
I'm not so sure about that. If that were true, Maki would have confessed already. Do you remember when Maki said she would do anything to defeat Kokichi? I think
Chi-Chi hesitated, swallowing hard.
I think Kaito's dead, and Maki is trying to kill Kokichi in the class trial. She wants to kill the mastermind, a remnant of despair.
For some reason, Kokichi's whole body went slack, as if relieved by Shuichi's seductions enough to finally stop fighting. Or at least, that's what Kaito hoped was the reason. As much as he hated constantly being at war with the kid, the thought of Kokichi being too far gone to fight him at all made him equally fearful. Despite being a robot, Kibo looked sick.
Then when Maki said she would sacrifice anything, she meant she plans to sacrifice all of our lives to kill Kokichi.
Sacrifice us?
That would make sense. By hiding the truth, Maki was trying to get us to arrive at the wrong answer. Just to kill Kokichi, and then the rest of us along with him.
So, doesn't that mean that Maki's the culprit?
Himiko tugged anxiously on her hat.
She knew what happened and tried to hide it from us.
Tsumugi whispered in horror. Maki looked out at her supposed friends, her eyes suspiciously wet and shiny despite her otherwise stony demeanor. Kaito felt as if his heart was breaking in two, but he couldn't back down now. It didn't matter if Maki cried. It didn't matter if Kokichi hated him. All that mattered was that the trial ended before somebody fucking died. So, Kaito finally resigned himself to the lie, even as a part of him laughed at the irony of it all. That when he finally learned how to embrace deceit, Kokichi was the one who resented him for it. In the dim shadows of the exisal, where Kokichi could hear him, even if Maki couldn't, Kaito whispered.
You'll forgive me eventually.
Kokichi's eyes widened, but before he could act, Kaito flipped a switch on the voice changer. And for the first time since the trial started, he became the lie.
Ha! Right again!
Kaito turned Kokichi cackled as he launched the exisal into the air and landed with a resounding thud behind the Ultimate Supreme Leader's portrait.
Looks like that mischievous plan was all ruined thanks to Shuichi here. Too bad, Maki. I already predicted this would happen.
It was a flawless impersonation, and Kaito could feel Shuichi's piercing glare like a dagger through his heart.
So, it is you, Kokichi. You knew all along that Maki was the culprit, and yet you're still playing with us?
Sure am!
Kaito sang out through Kokichi's voice.
It's just so fun to see that little spark of hope on all your sad little faces. Before I stamp it out like one of Gaunta's bugs!
You're a monster.
Takes one to know one.
Not Kokichi cheered, even as Kaito's mind wailed that Maki is not a monster. She's not!
So, can we, end this already?
Kaito yawned loudly to hide his very real desperation.
Now that the murder cat's out of the bag, this is getting super boring. Let's just vote already.
No, this isn't over.
Shichi's voice was calm, but his hands were shaking.
Maybe we do have the truth now, but this isn't over. There is still a lot about this case I don't understand. Tell us the truth, Maki. The truth only you know.
Maki, please tell us.
Tsumugi begged. Maki was silent, her eyes flickering like a candle in a storm.
Come on, Maki.
Kaito took his hand off the mic so she wouldn't hear his desperate pleas. Unfortunately, he wasn't the only one inside the Exo who was desperate enough to start begging.
Kaito.
Kokichi struggled painfully to sit up and nearly collapsed as he grasped Kaito's coat tightly in his fists.
Don't you get it? You can't let the class pin the crime on Maki.
Kokichi pressed his forehead miserably against Kaito's shoulder. He could feel the fever burning, even through 2 layers of fabric.
Ugh, why not?
Kaito grit his teeth, feeling extremely uncomfortable with Kokichi's odd, uncharacteristically vulnerable behavior. It wasn't like the kid to get this close if he could help it. While Kokichi loved to invade the personal space of people like Kirumi, Gonta, Chichi, and Kibo, he'd always held Kaito at arm's length. Maybe even the length of several arms.
Probably because he kept threatening to beat the shit out of him.
Kaito thought, spiraling deeper into resentment. With himself, with Kokichi, who even knows anymore?
It doesn't fucking matter! We just need to end the class trial with Monokuma declaring someone as the culprit. Then we can get out of this fucking exisal and prove to him that nobody was murdered.
No, we can't, you idiot.
The fingers buried in Kaito's coat loosened as Kokichi began to shiver.
Don't you get it, Kaito? Somebody was murdered.
What? What are you?
Kokichi flinched at some hidden pain in his body.
I can't.
He curled in on himself as a small whimper slipped between his chapped lips. For the first time, Kaito realized just how badly Kokichi was struggling to breathe. The boy was actively forcing himself to suck in every molecule of air, and with each exhale, he seemed a little weaker. Finally, it hit Kaito like a ton of bricks.
Somebody was murdered. Oh no. No. Oh my god, no!
It wasn't until Kokichi with a sad little laugh that Kaito realized he'd been babbling out loud.
Kokichi, don't you fucking dare!
Without thinking, Kaito gripped the boy's shoulders and shook him, desperate to snap him out of what exactly? Kokichi didn't even resist, his head lolling like a poorly stitched together doll.
You are not dying! Don't you dare give up!
Give up?
Kokichi's eyelashes fluttered as if he was about to pass out, yet he still managed to look scornful.
I told you we're competing in the Death Olympics, and I'll have you know I never lose a game.
Kokichi gave Kaito a wry, bitter smile.
Talk about victim blaming, you dumb jerk. Kaito,
The boy looked up at him with those big, shiny porcelain doll eyes. Eyes overflowing with so much pain, poison, and resignation that Kaito felt as if Kokichi had plunged a crossbow arrow through his heart.
I'm not gonna make it, okay? That's the truth. Maki's about to become the Blackened. For real. And if we're gonna do this, I need you to...
Kokichi paused to take a few urgent breaths.
I need you to accept that.
There was no lie in his eyes, no malicious intent, no mischief, no hint of deceit. His eyes were completely transparent, allowing Kaito to peer through them just this once, to remove the mask and see the raw, honest-to-God flesh beneath it. And that flesh was drained of all color as Kokichi's life slowly faded away. Furious, terrified, and furious at how terrified he was, Kaito gripped the boy's arms, though he was at least thinking straight enough to avoid touching the arrow wound.
No, I don't accept it. You're not dying. Do you hear me?
Kaito didn't know who he was trying to convince more. Himself or Kokichi?
You're so dumb.
Kokichi somehow mustered up enough strength to glare.
This is exactly what I've been saying. Your stupid optimism makes you blind to the truth. It makes you dangerous.
The flashback light became the motive.
At long last, Maki spoke, finally surrendering herself to the class's judgment. Kaito's head whipped around, watching in horror as Maki began unraveling a confession that could no longer be stopped.
When Kokichi remembered that he was a remnant of despair, I planned to kill him. I thought that if I killed him, this game, and the battle between hope and despair, would end.
Kaito was only half listening. The blood in his lungs was rising from the sheer rage in his chest. He knew the anger was misplaced, but he was just so fucking sick and tired. He was tired of the constant anxiety, the fear, the panic, the grief, the failure.
Fuck you!
Kaito shouted suddenly at Kokichi.
I will not apologize for being optimistic. And I will not apologize for trying to save your miserable piece of shit life!
Kaito turned his face away and coughed, unable to quell the spasms in his lungs any longer. He could feel hot blood leaking from his lips and saw several drops land on the script in his lap. The red blossomed across the paper like deathly flowers.
I was confident in my talent as an assassin,
Maki's voice wavered, but she otherwise managed to remain stoic.
and I knew I would be able to do it. So I took the poison arrow and the crossbow and broke into the hangar with an exocil. But when I entered the hangar, I saw something I never expected.
She slowly exhaled.
Kaito and Kokichi were fighting each other.
It was almost comical. The fighting never ended, did it? Even now, with death creeping in the shadows, with the air inside the exosol fading every second as Kaito and Kokichi decayed, the battle between them was eternal. Unavoidable even. They were a binary star system spiraling ever closer to its own destruction. Two fiery, unstable suns, trapped in orbit, sucking all the light and fire from each other. They were two doomed stars drawn ever closer by their gravitational pull, cannibalizing each other, unraveling each other, burning each other out. They were an unstoppable collision, an inevitable demise.
Your optimism is fucking stupid! You're about to get Maki killed because it didn't occur to you that I'm gonna die before the trial's over! You think if you just have enough faith, everything's just gonna magically work out? That's not optimism, you idiot. That's arrogance!
Kokichi was shot in the arm with a crossbow arrow, probably by Kaito when he fought back. Both of them stopped and looked at the exocil, most likely surprised by its sudden appearance. Kokichi immediately took out his remote and attempted to control the exocil I was in, but I jumped out before he could. Then, I shot Kokichi in the back with an arrow.
Hi.
Kaito swallowed, trying to come up with a rebuttal to Kokichi's spiteful words. Arrogance? Was it arrogant to believe there was still hope? To believe there was still a chance? Or was Kaito just doing what he always did? Gambling recklessly on a lost cause?
Just shut up.
Kokichi hissed before Kaito could answer.
Let me take over the exosol. Let me take the blame for your death. Otherwise, Maki's gonna be executed.
No, you can't!
Kaito blurted out as he saw Kokichi struggling to move.
Look at you! You can't even sit up!
He knew he was panicking, but he couldn't. He had to...
That should have been enough to stop him. Since the arrow was coated with poison, I could have chosen something far more lethal and fast-acting. But I wanted Kokichi to confess his true intentions before he died. Of course, it was pointless. I was a fool for thinking I could have a serious talk with him. Kokichi obviously had no intention of confessing, so I shot the final arrow. But then,
Maki squeezed her eyes shut.
Kaito jumped in front of me.
Everyone in the courtroom gasped as Maki finally confessed the truth. Shichi stumbled back in disbelief.
Kaito protected Kokichi?
So, help me sit up.
Kokichi said softly, as if some part of him was hoping Kaito wouldn't actually hear his request. The boy was sucking in weak puffs of air, his eyes glazed and out of focus.
What?
Kaito hadn't realized there were tears in his eyes until his vision began to blur.
Help me do this before it's too late.
At that moment, my mind went blank. I knew I had to do something about the poison, so I rushed to the Ultimate Detective's research lab for the antidote.
So you didn't have the antidote with you at the time.
Shichi tried not to sound accusatory, but there was a notable hint of condemnation in his voice.
Kaito,
Kokichi's head slumped forward. He was trembling so badly, Kaito suspected it was more like a convulsion.
I can't keep forcing myself to breathe for much longer.
No, 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 no!
No, I used Strike 9 poison to torture Kokichi for info, but I planned to kill him from the start.
Before Kaito could stop him, Kokichi lurched towards the controls and pressed his hand against the mic.
That's so mean!
But that was my first mistake.
Maki ignored Kokichi's taunts.
Because of that,
Her voice cracked as she held back a sob.
I ended up killing Kaito.
Suddenly, there were tears running down her face. Genuine tears of unfathomable despair.
Oh, Maki.
Kaito's heart sank at the sight of the assassin, brought so low with self-hatred. He wasn't sure how much more anguish he could endure in a single day.
When I returned with the antidote,
Maki's voice quivered.
the hangar shutter had been closed. I needed to give Kaito the antidote somehow, So I went to the bathroom window. After calling out to him, I chucked the antidote through the window. Kaito grabbed it, but
Maki's face twisted with grief.
Kokichi stole it from him.
Don't you see?
Kokichi was swaying dangerously.
It's all my fault. So, let me take responsibility this one time.
I watched him drink it, but I refused to give up. I tried to enter the hangar by breaking the control panel with my knife, but in the end, I couldn't. After that, I returned to the bathroom window once more, but I didn't see anyone. When I called out, neither Kaito nor Kokichi answered. I couldn't do anything anymore. All I could do was leave. That's when I made up my mind.
Maki whirled around and glared venomously at the Exisal.
As the Black End who killed Kaito, I would kill Kokichi during the class trial, in exchange for all of your lives.
Despite the elaborate confession, Kibo just looked confused.
So then, Kokichi, knowing what he knew, still helped Maki cover up her crime?
Was that why you smooshed Kaito in the hydraulic press?
Himiko looked up at the Exisal with red puffy eyes. Even though he was clearly struggling to stay upright, Kokichi switched on the mic, and Kaito was helpless to stop him because he couldn't make any noise that would alert the class to the fact that there was someone else inside the Exisal.
Kaito wanted Maki to be spotless,
said Kokichi, somehow managing to sound like his usual self, in spite of the fact that he was shivering uncontrollably.
As his friend, I felt obliged to help him.
Maki's crimson eyes flared with rage, no doubt remembering that the footage of the murder wasn't even real.
How dare you make fun of him? You call yourself a friend? You enjoyed watching us suffer? You fucking asshole!
Kaito expected Kokichi to harass and ridicule Maki like he usually did, to stay in character, so no one would notice his failing health. But he didn't. Instead, he bowed his head, took in several shallow, desperate grasps of air. When he could more or less speak normally, he pressed his finger against the mic and said,
"You're right. I confess."
Maki took a very step back.
What?
I confess.
Kokichi repeated more firmly this time.
I did enjoy watching you all suffer. I'm the mastermind, right? So of course I'd revel in toying with all your pathetic, worthless lives.
Kaito gaped at Kokichi, uncomprehending.
What is he doing? Kokichi, you don't mean that. I know you don't.
And Kaito had no idea when he'd become so sure of that. If someone had asked him mere hours ago what he thought of Kokichi Oma, he would have called him the most morally reprehensible piece of shit he'd ever met in his life. In fact, if we were being completely honest, and Kaito could admit that for all the hell he'd given Kokichi about being a liar, being completely honest wasn't exactly Kaito's specialty either. He'd had some very dark thoughts when it came to Kokichi. The way the little brother assaulted and belittled his ideologies had felt more than just personal. They didn't just make Kaito feel hurt, they made him feel hateful. And Kaito hated Kokichi for turning him into someone who was capable of being hateful. Kaito Momota, Luminary of the Stars, didn't hate. He was a hero who was supposed to believe in everyone, and Kaito truly believed he could believe in everyone, until a little hellspawn known as Kokichi Oma was dropped into his life. Kokichi not only made Kaito hateful, he made him doubt himself in ways he never had before. He began to doubt his beliefs, that people were inherently good, that even the most twisted and traumatized human beings could be salvaged if he were just kind enough to them, that if he extended a hand, even the most damaged person would eventually take it. Then, Kokichi came along and took a sledgehammer to the structure supporting Kaito's entire world. First of all, Kokichi did it maliciously laughing in his face, before leaving Kaito alone in the crumbling ruins of who he used to be. Or who he thought he used to be, at least. But in the end, when Kaito and Kokichi were injured, bleeding, poisoned and dying on a cold bathroom floor, it was Kokichi who had extended his hand, wasn't it? It was Kokichi who reached out to Kaito and offered him a chance. Not to live, necessarily, or to be a hero, because Kaito was terminally ill and about to commit murder, but to die meaningfully. Kokichi had forcefully pressed the antidote bottle to Kaito's lips and told him he wasn't going to die in such a stupid, boring blaze. He told him this was his chance to save Maki and end the killing game. And Kaito was so dazed from pain and so fixated on the words, "end the killing game," that it wasn't until he'd swallowed the last drop of the antidote that he suddenly realized what had just happened. Kokichi Oma, The ultimate supreme leader, had just committed suicide. To save Maki, the girl he hated. To end the killing game, which he claimed to love. To give Kaito one last chance to do the right thing. To ensure Kaito could live long enough to die on his own terms. To let Kaito die victoriously, rather than die a feeble side character swirling away in a pool of blood. It was a chance to die like a comet, in a bright blaze of glory, rather than extinguished slowly in the cold blackness of a senseless disease. And even back then, as Kaito dragged Kokichi's limp body across the floor of the hangar, trying to ignore the boy's anguished cries of pain, he continued pondering the boy's true motivations. Surely, Kokichi didn't care about Kaito or Maki. He was just a sore loser who wanted to throw at the chessboard before the masked man could declare checkmate. Kokichi would rather die a winner, with his middle finger in the air, than admit he'd been defeated. Kokichi Oma was the king horse, the proud knight on the chessboard who weaves across the battlefield in bizarre patterns before seizing the enemy's crown. Kokichi wasn't a mastermind, but he would die if it meant he could be. Right? But if that was all he cared about, if his only purpose was to checkmate the king, would the proud knight really abandon his last shred of dignity to bury his face in Kaito's coat and beg on behalf of Maki's life? Kaito didn't doubt Kokichi was manipulative enough to grovel, humiliate himself, or feign empathy in order to get something he wanted. But if Kokichi really was a heartless monster whose only goal was to spite Monokuma, he wouldn't care if the girl who plunged an arrow in his spine ended up being executed. He wouldn't care if there was a collateral damage, so long as the game was broken and there was a crown on his grave. If Kokichi was a cruel, remorseless villain, he wouldn't be hunched over inside an exisal, shivering, using up the last of his breath to save the girl who damned him. If he was truly a selfish, megalomaniacal antagonist, he wouldn't care about what happened to anyone left alive after his death. A world that existed without him would have no meaning. And yet, Kokichi begged to take the fall, to take the blame for a crime he hadn't even committed, the crime that killed him, just to make sure Maki wasn't in danger of being executed.
Let me take responsibility this time.
Kokichi had said those words before, hadn't he?
Yeah, I know already. It should have been my responsibility!
Kaito could still hear Kokichi's cry echoing inside his skull, and with it came a resurgence of memories, of the unfathomable grief and fury that filled his heart when Kokichi sobbed hoarsely at the end of the fourth trial. At the time, Kaito had written it off as more of Kokichi's manipulative bullshit, maybe some play at sympathy while Gaunter, his sacrifice, was preparing to die for him. But now, Kaito's eyes widened as he watched Kokichi's fingers trembling on the mic, as the boy forced himself to stay upright, to stay conscious, to spit lie after lie after lie, regardless of how badly it vilified him. It was like a bucket of ice water was suddenly dumped over Kaito's head, and he could do little more than stare, his mind spinning and dizzy in circles, as all the pieces of the puzzle finally came together.
Oh my god.
Kaito felt a chill roll down his spine.
Kokichi cares.
It seemed ridiculously simple in hindsight. The past few hours, Kaito had occasionally had thoughts, such as, maybe Kokichi can be decent when it suits him. Or maybe Kokichi really does hate the killing game. Or Kokichi might be capable of having human emotions every once in a while. Yet the idea that Kokichi legitimately cared about his classmates, that he cared about what happened to them, and genuinely wanted to save them, had somehow never fully taken form in Kaito's mind. Perhaps a part of him had been in denial, had been too tired to really dwell on whether or not Kokichi gave a shit beyond the most basic surface level. Yet the sudden revelation that Kokichi Oma actually cared made Kaito feel as if someone had tipped him backwards and set him free falling through a nightmare.
Kokichi.
Kaito struggled to find his voice.
Kokichi, stop.
But the ultimate supreme leader refused to cease his false battle against Maki.
Of course, I wasn't gonna let you hog all the fun, little Miss Assassin. Why should you get to be the one to finally shut that dumb blabbermouth up? No, I wanted to be the one to do it.
Maki's eyes were swirling with anger, confusion, and fear.
What are you saying?
I'm saying I did it, you ignorant swine!
Kokichi suddenly shouted at Viewfinder, as if he could make Maki actually see his rage.
Get it through your thick skull, you stupid murderous hag! I killed Kaito!
Realizing what was about to happen, Kaito seized Kokichi's hand and wrenched it away from the mic before the class could hear him collapse in a convulsive coughing fit. Desperate to do something, Kaito pulled Kokichi's frail body against his side and wrapped an arm around him in a fearful embrace, praying the small protective gesture would somehow ease the boy's suffering.
It's okay. You're alright. I've got you.
Kaito barely even knew what he was saying, but all his thoughts were tripping over themselves in a panic frenzy. He just wanted the pain to stop. He wanted this to be over. He couldn't watch Kokichi squirm in agony any longer, knowing he put the boy through unfathomable torture, and Kokichi had forced himself to play along because he actually cared.
You're gonna be okay. I swear it. I swear.
Kaito tried to ignore the burning heat of the unshed tears behind his eyes.
Not now, damn it. Not now.
When the coughing ceased, Kokichi groaned and buried his face in Kaito's chest. The unexpectedly vulnerable gesture made Kaito's heart race with terror. Kokichi would never let himself be seen like this unless...
No. This isn't happening. I won't let it. Kokichi, I get it, okay?
Kaito embraced Kokichi a little tighter, trying to impart how seriously he meant his words.
You said you wanted to take responsibility. But I'm responsible for this too. I'm the one who made you suffer through this trial. And I'm the one who was so fucking bullheaded and stubborn. I ended up putting Maki in danger.
Kaito hung his head in shame, resting his chin in Kokichi's damn tangled hair.
I don't want you to have to do this to yourself anymore. But at the same time, I need you to live. Do you hear me? I can't accept any other conclusion. Not until we reach a conclusion. And I don't care if you think that makes me stupid. So Kokichi, please, let me take responsibility. You've done enough. More than enough. So, trust me to see us through to the end. Okay?
Kokichi didn't raise his head from Kaito's chest, or respond. And with a sinking feeling in his gut, Kaito wondered if Kokichi could even respond anymore. If not for the fact that he could feel the boy trembling and hear his weak, exhausted gasp for air, he might have thought Kokichi was already gone. But he wasn't. He wasn't, goddammit. Kokichi wasn't dead, and he wasn't alone. And Kaito wasn't going to let this damn child carry the burden of the entire killing game on his shoulders, until he was crushed beneath the weight of its sins. Not this time. Not anymore. Kaito was going to take responsibility, and he was going to save everyone. And that meant saving both Maki and Kokichi from themselves. And so, with a painful, shuddering breath, Kaito activated the Exorcist's voice changer and prepared himself for the battle of a lifetime.
Things seem unsteady, but we're getting ready to face anything that may soon come our way. The clock is ticking, there's no time for wasting, there's no time to hesitate. The final showdown, we won't let them win now, not when we have come so far. So let's take a chance for the win, we must amalgamate.
Things seem unsteady, but we're getting ready to face anything that comes our way. The clock is ticking, there's no time for wasting, there's no time to hesitate. The final showdown, can't let them win now, not when we have come so far. So let's take a chance for the win, we will amalgamate. Through pain and hatred,
Through love and friendship,
through all the hardship,
we gotta make it.
through joy and sadness,
Through all the madness,
through all that may seem insane.
we're taking a stand, working hand in hand. On you I'll depend,
For you I'll defend.
with truth I'll debate, with lies we'll create. Let's go in this killing game.
Things seem unsteady,
But we're getting ready to face anything that comes our way. The clock is ticking, there's no time for wasting, there's no time to hesitate.
the final showdown, we can't let them win now, not when we have come so far. So let's take a chance for the win.